Thank you for joining us. My name is Jennifer Homendy, and I'm the chairwoman of the National Transportation Safety Board. The National Transportation Safety Board is an independent federal agency that's charged by Congress with investigating every civil aviation and serious accident and serious incident in the United States and significant events in other modes of transportation. I want to start by expressing our deepest condolences, our sympathies on behalf of the entire board for those who lost loved ones in this terrible tragedy. Our thoughts, our prayers are with you. Entire communities were affected, and we are thinking of you. With me today is Bryce Banning. Bryce is a senior aircraft accident investigator with the National Transportation Safety Board. He's also going to serve as our investigator in charge of this investigation. Also with me today is the entire board. We have Todd Inman, member Todd Inman. Todd is going to serve as the board member on scene, the spokesperson for this investigation. All of the board members will be here. We have Vice Chairman Alvin Brown, member Mike Graham, who lived in Wichita for 20 years, and we also have member Tom Chapman. The NTSB's headquarters is just a mile from here, and so we are all here because this is an all-hands on-deck event, and we're here to assure the American people that we are going to leave no stone unturned in this investigation. We are going to conduct a thorough investigation of this entire tragedy, looking at the facts. Now, with that, I want to level set. When we go to the scene, and we were here last night, we allow the responders to do their important safety mission, which in this case was search and rescue and recovery. We stand back to allow them to do their important safety mission. And so this, for us, is our first full day on scene with our entire crew coming together. We have about nearly 50 people on scene, and in addition to our resources back at headquarters in our labs and throughout the agency. So with that said, we are not going to get into specific facts in this press conference. I want to level set here. We're going to get into our investigative process. As we are able to confirm factual information, we will provide that. I do want to say this is a whole of government effort. I was able to brief, along with others, the President of the United States and the Vice President this afternoon. I want to thank them for their leadership, for their tremendous support of the NTSB, for our investigators, and for the responders that are on scene doing an important mission. I also want to thank Secretary Sean Duffy, who I was communicating with early on after we first got word of this tragedy. We've been working together throughout the day, along with his team at the DOT and within FAA. I also want to thank Secretary Pete Hegseth, who was also integral in working with us today. Chris Rocheleau, the acting administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. We've heard from many members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, and so I will say this is a tremendous, one more time, whole of government effort. I also want to take a moment and thank the many, many responders that have been on scene. It has been an incredible effort. And I will have a full list that I will provide, that we will provide tomorrow, but I do want to thank them for all their work. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Member Inman for additional remarks.
So today is our first full day on scene. Our investigative team will be on scene as long as it takes in order to obtain all of the perishable evidence and all of the fact-finding that is needed to bring us to a conclusion of probable cause. Our mission is to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, and to recommend changes to prevent it from happening again. Since we're just beginning our investigation, we don't have a great deal of information to share right now. We will keep you informed by giving regular updates as we learn more. Our intention is to have a preliminary report within 30 days, and the final report will be issued once we've completed all of our fact-finding and investigation. Now, we will not be determining the probable cause of the accident while we are here on scene, nor will we speculate about what may have caused this accident. Today, we will be going and having an organizational meeting and establishing our parties to our investigation. We currently have the following parties that are already identified: PSA Airlines, GE Aerospace, Sikorsky, FAA, NACTA, which represents the air traffic controllers, ALPA, which represents the pilots, Army, AFA, which represents the flight attendants. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada will be an accredited representative under Annex 13 of ICAO. They will be supplemented by MHIRG as a technical advisor. They were previously known as Bombardier. The NTSB offers this party status to those companies, government agencies, and associations that have employees, activities, or equipment involved in the accident. We offer that because they will provide technical expertise and relevant information supporting the development of the best possible factual record. Once they join this investigation, they are not permitted to release documents or talk publicly about the investigation without the consent of the NTSB. So I want to stress this. It is only the NTSB that will provide information related to this investigation, with one exception. Regarding the fatalities that occurred, that notification will be handled by the DC medical examiner. We will not be discussing fatalities or names. That will be handled by them as the proper authority. So we want to talk a little bit about our process. We will analyze the facts and determine the probable cause of the accident, and then issue a report of those determinations. I also want to talk a little bit about some additional people that are here with us, and they're very important to us, and that is our family assistance group. Later today, we will be briefing the families. We normally try to do this before a media event, but in this case, they're still arriving. Our family assistance specialists are already working closely with local officials and others to help assist them in their efforts to support everyone that's affected by this accident. And let me just reiterate what the chair said. A loss of life in an aviation accident is very unusual in the United States, and our heartfelt sorrow goes out to everyone that's affected. It affects us, it affects everyone around us. There are a lot of people hurting today. We will help find out what happened. We will do it factually, and we will do it accurately. As part of this, we are going to be standing up some specific working groups. Those working groups will be operations. They will be looking at the history of the accident flight and crew members' duties for as many days before the crash as appears relevant. We'll be forming a structures group, which will be the documentation of the airframe wreckage and the accident scene, including calculation of impact angles to help determine the plane's pre-impact course and altitude. We'll have a power plants group. They will do the examination of the engines and the engine accessories. We'll have a systems group. They will study the components of the plane's hydraulic, electrical, pneumatic, and associated systems, together with the instruments and elements of the flight control system. We'll have an air traffic control group. They will do reconstruction and review of air traffic control systems provided to and including acquisition of pertinent flight track surveillance information, what you might typically think of as radar or ADSB, along with controller pilot communications. We will also have a survival factors group. They will be doing the documentation of impact, forces and injuries, community emergency planning, and all crash and fire rescue efforts. Also, due to the unique nature of this crash, we will be having a helicopter group as well. Lastly, we will have a human performance group, and this will not be its own group. It will actually be a part of the operations, air traffic control, and helicopter groups. They will study the crew performance and all before the accident factors that might be involved in human error, including fatigue, medication, medical histories, training, workload, equipment design, and work environment. Now we're going to take a few questions, but I will again stress we don't have a lot of information now. We will continue to gather that. We will try to release it as we can, but we will only talk about the facts of the case that we know right now. I'm going to ask, we'll call on a few people. I'm going to ask that you state your name and affiliation.
James Matthews from Sky News. So we've heard from President Trump today talking about DEI hiring policies within the FAA and associating that with the cause of this accident. What do you say to that?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't hear the remarks. I was briefing House and Senate members, but I believe, Chair, would you like to take that?
As part of any investigation, we look at the human, the machine, and the environment. So we will look at all the humans that were involved in this accident. Again, we will look at the aircraft, we will look at the helicopter, we will look at the environment in which they were operating in. That is standard in any part of our investigation. I'll turn it back.
Chair, can I ask you, has the flight data recorder been recovered yet? And what is the difficulty in a water disaster like this, which presents a very difficult environment for your investigators and the people out on the water right now?
Well, the question was on the flight data recorders. And we have not recovered the flight data recorders yet. We know they're there. They are underwater. This is not unusual for the NTSB. We have many times recovered flight data recorders in water. We have our lab right here that is about a mile from the NTSB, so it's not unusual. And once we get those, we'll be able to get those read and information from them to be able to provide further information to you. I'm going to turn it back over to Member Inman.
Sir.
With CBS News. Earlier today, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said a mistake was made last night. Based off of you all's initial investigations and preliminary findings, have you all been able to tell whether this was human error or mechanical failure?
The question was, is there been human error or mechanical failure? We don't know what we know just yet. We do not know enough facts to be able to rule in or out human factor, mechanical factors. That is part of the NTSB investigative process and where all of these groups will come together. It's one of the reasons why the NTSB is known as the gold standard. We will take the time that's necessary, but I'd also like to reiterate, if we find something that is a significant issue that warrants immediate action, we will not hesitate to make those recommendations and make them public. We have a good track record on that, and we want to continue doing so. Sir.
Hello, sir. Tom Costello with NBC News. Does it hurt your investigative process, maybe for the chairman, does it hurt your investigative process to have the president already suggesting possible causes here as you try to keep an open mind and begin this investigation?
Thank you.
Tom, with all due respect, I think the press also likes to state what probable cause is before we get to the probable cause. So what I'm going to say is you need to give us time. You need to give NTSB, it's not that we don't have information. We do have information. We have data. We have substantial amounts of information. We need to verify information. We need to take our time to make sure it is accurate. That's best for you. That's important for the families. It's important for legislators who are seeking answers to try to figure out what they're going to do about this. And so it will take time. We do have a lot of information, but we need some time to verify that.
Yeah, Member Chase Williams from Fox Business. I'm wondering about the conditions in the tower last night. Were there any performance issues in the past with any of these controllers? Anything of that?
The question is about controllers. As I said, we are just now forming the groups. The controllers do have union representation, which they are entitled to. They'll be working with our party system and our party groups They will be conducting interviews. Those interviews will need to be analyzed, transcribed, and other team members will need to look over it. It'll be a long process, but we will go through the entire history.
My question is for the chairwoman. Can you tell us more about what the president and the vice president's responses were when you briefed them this afternoon?
Sure. So the question was about my briefing for the president and the vice president. As is standard, we offer briefings on our process and what we know, and this was a briefing with the president and vice president and with Secretary Duffy and Secretary Hegseth and also the acting administrator of the FAA. There was discussion on what we know so far and our process, and that was about it.
Madam Chairwoman, Stephanie Ramos with ABC News. Similar to Tom Costello's question, the president has stated what may have caused the crash, stating common sense. Does that affect your progress at all at this early stage?
Yeah, so the NTSB, we conduct an important safety mission where we take a very careful approach. I'm sorry, the question was on speculating during investigations, which is we often hear about. What I will say is we look at facts on our investigation, and that will take some time. And at some point, we'll be able to provide that factual information, as Member Inman said, and provide that hopefully tomorrow.
Hang on a second. Dave.
Have you been able to retrieve the black boxes from the helicopter? Has the military decided whether they're going to read those to the NTSB? And what about the ATC tapes?
So the question was about black boxes, which are referred to as black boxes, which are typically orange. We have not recovered any of the boxes involved yet. We feel comfortable and confident that we will be able to. Right now, recovery of life is probably the most important in those that were involved. I mean, there are still ongoing recovery efforts involving the fatalities involved, along with some debris is coming out as well. We will make sure that that perishable evidence is maintained. We have a great process for that. We will probably have more than one black box, so to speak. It's our understanding that the Sikorsky helicopter is equipped with some form of recording devices, and those will be read either by the DoD or by us. We have a good starting relationship with them, and we've already made agreements in order to be able to do that. So I feel comfortable in what we're going to be doing. The other question was about air traffic control. We received a very large package of information from the FAA at about 3 a.m., I believe, this morning. That is still being reviewed and analyzed. I would say there's a lot more information that usually comes in that than what you might find online and people might speculate about. And that is part of that overall process where we take the time to get the information correct and to make sure all the parties are engaged and involved and can fact check that information. One.
From CNN. Can you tell me if the NTSB has reviewed this FAA internal report that has been cited by the New York Times indicating that the controller that was on duty at the time of the crash was doing a job that's usually done by two people?
We have not reviewed any specific reports about the controllers at this time, at least from the leadership team. Our investigators are continuing to pull all that information. Their personnel records, their files, where they were at, whether they were fatigued, all that information will be part of that investigative process. But right now we can't speculate on anything that may have been reported in the media until we get the opportunity to validate and understand how it impacts the investigation. We're going to take just a few more questions. Sir?
Yes, Orange Kana and Zebra Magazine. What's the process and the logistics like of bringing the families in? Are they coming into the airport? And how are you going to sort of treat the sensitivity of bringing them to the place where this tragedy happened?
So the question is about the families. And many of those families are still en route. Some are still being notified from both the military and from the commercial crash. There is a family assistance facility that's being stood up by American and PSA Airlines in Bethesda, Maryland. They've already been working on that, standing it up. Our team from our disaster assistance team has also been coordinating with them. We plan on briefing them. It is customary that at some point, if the families wish to go to part of the accident site, that we would arrange such a thing, but it will only be when we know that it's safe, we have the correct perishable evidence, and we can do it in the proper modesty that should be for those family members. It will be a little bit of a process, but it will take some time.
Sir, to follow up on the air traffic control.
No. Sir, or you?
I know that Marielle Cardone with DC News now. We've heard from some witnesses that they saw people were able to come down the slides of the plane. Has there been any indication that people made it off the plane into the water?
Well, again, we will not speak to the fatalities. The D.C. medical examiner will, but I think the D.C. fire chief this morning very succinctly said correctly that we believe there are no survivors.
But were they off the plane? Like, did they even get out of the plane?
Last question.
So, hang on one second. Right now, we're going through the debris fields. Nothing we've seen would indicate that maybe slides or chutes were deployed. It was a very quick, rapid impact, but we've seen nothing in that regard so far from the evidence we had, but we still need to verify all of that information. One more question?
Sorry, Sam, right here. Sure. Are you going to be looking at the family member's cell phone?
Go ahead.
Jeff Cook, ABC News. What do you know about the altitude of the helicopter at the moment of impact? And can you talk about the procedure for such helicopters in that area?
The question was about the helicopter procedures. And in D.C., it's kind of a unique environment. We've been getting briefed more and more by the FAA. I'm not an air traffic control specialist, but they're actually helicopter zones, if you will, or tracks. And this one was transiting, I believe, from track 1 to 4 as part of their normal procedure. If you live in D.C., you see a lot of helicopters going down into this area. So there's a very well-defined system in that regard. As far as altitude, until we get the additional information, we can't validate or basically corroborate any of that until we get more of the electronic data and the data that's on the plane. I do want to clarify one question that also came about cell phones. You know, in today's age and time, a lot of electronics and other devices do contain a lot of different information. We've found on a number of our accidents that we actually are notified through a smartphone that may sense that. As part of our process, we will obviously treat all of the effects of the deceased with dignity. We are already starting to pull that information together. If we feel that it's necessary to find or pull some of that information, we will work with the families and make sure we do it in a manner that's respectful for them and their privacy. But right now, we don't have any plans specifically on that amount, on that area until we need to. Thank you very much.